An ESPN insider has come out and said that other team scouts are going to Chicago Bulls games in hopes that the team is eventually going to blow up. We're going to get into more of that in this episode of Bulls Digest. I'm your host, Joey Mercer, and let's get right into it. So yeah, it was an ESPN insider that talked about a Bulls rebuild. The team obviously right now has been in the news each and every single day about if they're going to blow up, when it's going to happen. Is it going to happen this season, the end of the year, or should they have already done it? So this was tweeted out by ESPN Insider Brian Windhorst saying, in talking to some people around the league, the scouts are jamming themselves into Bulls games because they realize that at some point the Bulls may break this team up. And they're all gathering intelligence like what's going to happen with the Bulls. So very interesting to see that the other teams, staff are looking at the Bulls saying that this team is going to crumble. But the Bulls front office is not looking at the team that way. They're like, these guys, are the team that are going to get it done for the Bulls. We're a piece away. We want to stay competitive. We don't want to rebuild. So it's really strange how pretty much everybody on the outside in the league is looking at the Bulls as a team that should rebuild, but just the Bulls themselves are not in that situation. The fan base for the Bulls, as I've seen online, is pretty torn in both directions. Some people are like one player needs to be moved, a couple players need to be moved. Some people say blow the whole team up. We need to start from fresh. It's not the right team to rebuild around. And then other people are like, maybe we just need to move on from DeMar. It is really hard to say if you're a Bulls fan where you stand at this current moment. Another thing that came out was from an article that I read from Sports Illustrated saying, the spotlight is particularly on crucial players such as Lavine and DeRozan. Lavine, a two-time All-Star, has already been linked to trade negotiations, most notably with the 76ers, following the trade of James Harden. DeRozan, who is in the final year of his deal, is allegedly in contract talks with the Bulls and is against a rebuild. So that's another thing that caused some turmoil within the team and within the staff, of course, as well, because they have to be with these players each and every single day. If DeRozan doesn't want a rebuild to happen, and he's one of the big players on the team, and if you are looking at staying relevant and signing him, you don't want to move pieces around him that are going to make the team look like they're getting worse, because he's going to become disgruntled, and it's not going to leave a good name on the Chicago Bulls or their front office staff after all they've done to acquire DeMar and the team around him, and then go ahead and just blow it up and not move him as well. It's not a good look for the team, and they need to make a decision on that ASAP, in my opinion. Also came out saying this move, while somewhat overdue, might result in significant gains for the Bulls, especially if they decide to part ways with key players such as them. For a few seasons, the franchise has languished in mediocrity, making the playoffs only once since 2018. The team's 40-42 record last season fueled cries for a rebuild. I'd have to disagree on the fact that going 40-42 and almost making it into the postseason, might I add, is not a reason to look at a rebuild. Teams each and every single year just miss the playoffs and then add a piece, and then suddenly now they're in the mix of this 5th or 6th seed, and you never know what's going to happen in the postseason. Look at the Hawks a few years ago. The Bulls last year beat the Raptors in a play-in game to knock them out completely, and had to get past the Heat, who made it all the way to the finals. That's the team we lost to, and we just had things fall apart in the last few minutes of that game. As I watched that live, I saw things crumble in the last few minutes, as we were just one piece away from beating that team and making the postseason, and that one piece was probably Lonzo Ball. We didn't have a solid playmaker out there, and Lavine was getting turnovers as well as DeMar, because we just don't have that point guard that we can trust to put as the keys to the driver of the car, being the Bulls. And right now, it isn't the right situation at point guard for us with Lonzo out. We'd need somebody else there, which is what also leaves speculation. Is he going to be back at all, Lonzo? I think he'll return next season, but no one can say how good he's going to be when he returns. If he's going to return to the form that he was at, or if he's just not going to be able to sustain playing in the league anymore with the injuries that he's gone through now. The next thing I want to talk about is how the team looks this season. Is the team looking good this season? Is the team looking not so good? Do I think there's optimism for them to get better? I definitely think there's some optimism, but there are some pretty gruesome numbers out there stating how the team is playing so far. So if you look at this, it says the Bulls have been one of the more disappointing teams in the league thus far. At 3-6, they have one of the worst point differentials in the NBA, and their three-star core of Lavine, DeRozan, and Vucevic has been particularly rough to watch. DeRozan is a minus 77 on the season, Vuce is minus 53, and Lavine is a minus 59, or 49, sorry, in that matter. So yeah, another thing that just doesn't look good for the Bulls is their stars are such a minus. I also looked at a stat that I recently saw on the subreddit for the Chicago Bulls. I didn't link that one as a screenshot because I wasn't sure the accuracy of it up to date, but it did say that out of 8, duo lineups in the league, so when 2 players are on the court at the same time, what is their collective plus minus? And 5 of those duos, which included Jokic and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, were at the top, and the Bulls, 3 duos were on that list of playing at least 250 minutes combined total, and the Bulls' 3 sets of duos that they had all featured Zach LaVine and were all negative. Not a good look there. Obviously, LaVine is not a winning player up to this date. He hasn't been in the best situation either, so you can't hate on him completely there. I mean, you can only work with the tools that you're given. And then DeMar DeRozan as well is a minus 77 on the year, so not looking good at him as he gets older this year as well. So he's starting to slow down to start off this season, but I'm sure he can pick it up more towards the All-Star break and the postseason, if not sooner. We don't know what's going to happen with DeMar. Is it time to trade him right now while his value is still very high at the moment? Or do we think the value is starting to dip more and more to the point that it's just not worth to make that move right now? The next thing is that I read through the first 2 weeks of the season, the Bulls ranked 22nd in offensive ranking with 108.8 and 23rd in net rating with a rating of negative 5.1. However, the Bulls' turnover percentage is the best in the league, which makes the offensive struggle puzzling. The Bulls ranked 28th in assists at 22.6 a game, and 24th in three-pointers attempted at 31.1 per game, and 26th in three-pointers made at 10.9 per game. Their free throw attempts are pretty much the same too, averaging 20.3 per game, which is 23rd overall, making 16 per game, which is 19th overall. So a big struggle for them, obviously, is hitting the three-pointer. They're not shooting a lot, but if they shot more, that would just be worse because they're not hitting the low amount that they're shooting compared to the rest of the league. There's some major worries besides the turnovers haven't been too high. The only person I've seen to turn over the ball consistently this year so far is Zach LaVine when he tries to create. He hasn't shown what he has in previous years, and they really do need a better point guard next to him than Kobe White, so he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands so often. So the turnovers are not an issue right now, but we definitely need to get some three-point shooting in the door if we're not looking to rebuild right away. So the next thing I want to talk about is, should the Bulls even do this rebuild? Is it time for them to finally, take the team, reconfigure it, do a rebuild? Are we going to do a rebuild on the fly? Is there going to be a longer term one? It is hard to say. You need to look at the pieces that are offered. We need to look at what's on the table. And we also need to look at the issues within the organization right now. One of them is Nikola Vucevic about a week ago had that 2020 game against the Mavericks. And the rebounding on both sides of the ball for the Bulls has been better than last season. Yet the Bulls can't pull the wins together. When Vooch recorded that 2020 game, it was the first one since Pau did it in 2014, and it wasn't enough to get the Bulls past the Mavericks. That's going to be pretty disheartening if you're Nikola Vucevic, putting everything on the line, playing the best game he's played as a Chicago Bull, in my opinion, and then not getting the job done against the Mavericks when you got guys like Patrick Williams shooting 0 for 6 from the field. That's just no help. I'm glad to see that he's not in the starting lineup, as he's played much better off the bench. But it's time to make some changes. We can't just settle for what we have and expect it to change around. We need to make some moves, and we need to make them now. If we're not rebuilding, we need to retool, and we need to get the pieces in place before it's too late. Last thing I want to talk about here is this point right here that I saw in an article from Sports Illustrated, once again, a separate one. It was, with the least amount of turnovers per game, the offense must find a way to score. With the 25th overall field goal percentage throughout the league, the Bulls must either find higher percentage shots to score or simply shoot better. In the Bulls' recent loss to the Suns, head coach Billy Donovan spoke out about the game's final shoot. "When the double team comes, you got to get off of it," Donovan said. But there was no trap for DeMar. He had open room and space to make a play. It does not look good when Billy Donovan comes out and says that. I understand he was saying that DeMar made the right decision. However, he did not word it correctly. He worded it as if he's not agreeing with DeMar's decision. DeMar knows what he needs to do. He's been in the league long enough now. If he knows the shot is there for him, and he's going to take it. If the shot's not there, he's going to pass it up. But he's been the guy that's been able to hit these game winners consistently, as Lavine has not been as consistent, but has been able to. But DeMar's the guy that we want, that the ball in his hands when it comes down to in the clutch, and that's the right thing. Donovan has not been working well with the players lately, has not been making enough adjustments, and maybe that's the thing that people are overlooking, and maybe that's the thing that we need to be looking at. And the Chicago Bulls need to definitely look if the head coach is also causing some major options throughout the team. Is this, something that they need to address right away? Is at the All-Star break? The options are endless for when it comes to the Chicago Bulls front office right now, as there are so many questions within the organization. We're going to get in more of those tomorrow and every video from here on out until some things are adjusted. This has been Joey Mercer for Bulls Digest. Make sure to like and comment down below. Subscribe to the channel, as we're doing daily Bulls content here. Every single day I've been here. And we're going to be talking about the Chicago Bulls, the team that we all know and love. And I'll see you next time on Bulls Digest.